Growing up, Spider-Man was one of my favorite superheroes. The thought of being a teenager with the ability to swing from webs as I navigate across the city, saving civilians from potential threats, all while having a mudslinging journalist obsess over getting pictures of me in action.
Get me pictures of Spider-Man!
No way, Jonah. You know that's reserved for my OnlyFans. If you want the Spidey pics, you gotta pay up. Now, my love of Spider-Man started in 2002 with the Sam Raimi or Tobey Maguire movies. I used to love them so much. My 5-year-old brain thought it was peak cinema growing up. So when the licensed game was released on Gamecube, I just had to beg my parents to bring me to our local Blockbuster so I could rent it. Now, to be honest, I didn't remember much about this game other than it being hard, which would make sense for a 5-year-old boy. So my local game store got a copy of Spider-Man for Gamecube in box with all of the packaging, and I had to swipe it up to see if it still held up after all of these years, especially compared to the modern Spider-Man games made by Insomniac, which have been receiving tons of love since the series began in 2018. But before we get into that, if you are new to my channel, hi, I'm Chris. I make videos on gaming, tech, and Pokemon cards, so if you enjoyed this video, please do slam that subscribe button as we make our way to our goal of 100k subscribers. I would really appreciate it. So how does it hold up? Honestly, it was a little nostalgic and a little bad. Okay, listen, we are looking at this game through the lens of a 2024 Chris, so standards have changed drastically since then. Before we get into detail on the issues I had while playing the game, I do want to talk about some positives. The first one being the writing. I find the writing hilarious. It's almost like so cheesy that it's good, starting right off the bat with the narrator or the guide for the tutorials. He gives you tips, but in the most passive aggressive ways.
Your next marker is up, so you could crawl, but I know you. No, you want to go fast. You want it now.
And in some cases, just straight up aggressive, as if you should already know what you should be doing. It actually brings a lot of personality to the game. You know right off the bat that from this dialogue, there's going to be some fun involved. I also find it cool to experience a tutorial like this in current days. I feel like the more modern titles don't lean into this whole tutorial area or comical narration much anymore. Tutorials are now being replaced with just like text on the screen towards the early story beats of the main campaigns, which some may argue is better, but with an older game like this, it definitely benefits from having the open tutorial area, since you have to mess around with the controllers a bit before you start feeling, I don't know, more accustomed to how things work. And mind you, 3D consoles were still relatively new at the time, the N64 being the console that was released before this one, so if you never played the N64 prior to this, you really needed some time to adapt to this style of gameplay. Now, a quick side note, though I do like the writing, I will say the writing for Peter in particular is funny to me. From what I recall from the movies, Peter isn't really mean or nasty. They kind of play into the whole typical quips and jokes that Spider-Man would make, but in this game there are points in time where they have Tobey Maguire, yes, the one that played Spider-Man in the movie, he's voicing the same character in the game, which doesn't happen often, but they had him saying things like calling enemies dumb and ugly.
Dumb and ugly.
Like, it's not even clever at all, and I think it makes it funnier to me. Come on, Peter, we could do so much better than that. Dumb and ugly? What about making fun of my anxiety disorder or the years of family trauma I have? Be a little more creative, my guy. Anyway, besides the writing, I actually like the concept of the game overall. In the original movie, we are introduced to the Green Goblin as our main antagonist, but in the game, you get to go toe-to-toe with many different villains like Vulture, Shocker, and a couple more, which is a departure from what you'd expect in the introduction of the game, where they kind of frame up the story in a similar style to the movie's introduction by having Peter track down his Uncle Ben's killer after he gained his spider powers. So as you progress through the game, you learn pretty quickly that each part of the game is split into levels. You either accomplish a task in the city skies or move room to room in different areas fighting bad guys and collecting objects that you need to progress before you are met with a boss after a few levels. It's simple but still fun gameplay once you get the hang of the controls. The fun part is finding these little indicators that you can interact with to unlock new combos to use against your enemies, but unfortunately that is kind kind of where the good things I have to say end. So the controls. Now, back in the day, I am very sure these were very adequate controls or control schemes, but I found everything to be a bit clunky and hard to navigate. I found myself dying so many times because I was trying to do one action and then another thing would happen, or I was trying to move in one direction, but for some reason I went another. It was a little confusing overall, but eventually I managed. Comparing this to Insomniac Spider-Man games, it's like night and day, especially when it comes to camera control and web swinging. But that's not to say that the modern Spider-Man games don't have a similar controller setup. The C-stick is meant for your camera movement, and the right trigger is meant to swing. A and I believe X or Y are meant for combat. And then there are like little details that I found similar overall. It's almost like Insomniac used the control scheme as a base and then expanded on it for modern titles. I also found this whole sky drone section that was early on into the game to be extremely annoying. I must have died like 8 times while trying to play through it, and I kept having to run away from the drones and then find health and the web containers around the city to turn around, continue to fight the enemies, and then I would die. It was not great. And I should also point out that I lost to Shocker quite a few times as well, but I finally won against him due to a glitch that kept him stuck in place while I was just wailing on the dude. You know, I'll take the win where I can get it. Other than that, I played through the game up until I believe like the 3rd boss and thought it wasn't an amazing experience, but I found it nice to revisit a game I remembered playing back when I was a little kid. I don't do that too often because there's just so many things to play. I also had someone watching me play, so we were laughing about the writing, the clunky controls. It kind of reminded us about how far games have actually come in such a short amount of time. Say what you want, but video games are still a relatively new medium compared to movies and TV shows, so the advancements we have seen over the last few decades are even more impressive than one would initially think. I also can't deny the fact that this game seemed like effort was actually put into it. There are definitely times where licensed games have been made or produced for a quick cash grab, and I don't think that Spider-Man for the GameCube or PlayStation at the time was made with that intent. I don't regret revisiting Spider-Man on GameCube. If anything, it made me want to rewatch the Sam Raimi movies again, which luckily are back in theaters at the time of writing this script, and it also made me want to check out the game sequels as well, which if you want me to make a video about the other games in the series, let me know in the comments and we can see what I could do. But again, I'm just happy I got to spend time with this piece of media that helped breed my love for Spider-Man today. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective look back at the original Spider-Man game on GameCube. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and smash that like button as well. It helps in the algorithm. But most importantly,
Get me pictures of Spider-Man.